Hello again everyone and welcome back to Reddit Aliens. I'm John and as always, thank you so much for being here. Good topic today and a long video. Let's do it. What was something you saw or experienced that made you believe in the supernatural? Please remember to like, share, and subscribe. In January of 2010, I was driving to Los Angeles after spending the holidays with family. I-40 the whole way. After a long day of driving, I stopped at Holbrook, Arizona to get a hotel for the night. I get the room, pull around to the back parking lot and park my car. I open the back door and start to grab my bags and get my stuff together. I was going to take it inside for the night. All of a sudden, I hear a crazy sounding roar. The closest I can come to describing it is that it sounded like a mixture of a bear roaring, a pig squealing, and a baby crying. I freeze, look up, and standing on the edge of the raised parking lot next door was some kind of man-dog thing. It was probably about 7 or 8 feet tall. I look at it, it roars again, and I take off running toward my hotel room. I get to the door, scared shitless, fumbling with the key card, and it roars again, like it's just to the left of me. I get the key in the door, lock the door, then run in the bathroom and lock that door too. I sat there for maybe 30 minutes. Then I grabbed the pillows and blankets off the bed and slept in the bathtub all night with the door locked. I started searching on my phone for what the hell that was, and that night I learned about skinwalkers. If that exists, then what the hell else does that supposed to be? What was almost just as crazy is that when I bolted toward my room, I left my car unlocked and the doors wide open. They stayed open all night and nothing was taken or stolen. And I had a bunch of music equipment in there. But yeah, be careful on the edges of a Navajo reservation. I lived in the middle of nowhere in Ireland growing up. A friend and I were camping outside in our field. We hear this singing in the middle of the night. My friend unzips the tent and looks out. He wakes me up and tells me to come look. There in the middle of the field is a woman, pure white skin, blonde hair, and a dress made of some really light flowing fabric, tunic-like. She's walking slowly across the field singing in Gaelic. I still have everything burned in my mind, from how she looked to how she sounded. Her voice was light, but yet kind of raspy. Everything about her was ethereal. My friend wanted to go talk to her. I pulled him back into the tent, and we ended up hiding in our sleeping bags till the next morning. I'm almost 100% sure it was a fae. We were too far away from other people for it to have been a random person. Another one, I saw a ball of light over a nearby field another night. It hovered about 10 feet off the ground, and then sped off over the field ridiculously fast. Then it disappeared into a hedge. No idea what it was. I'm a skeptic when it comes to ghosts, aliens, monsters, etc., but I'm a believer when it comes to the fae. Those fuckers are real, and they aren't the little Tinkerbell-like things. Fae are tall, beautiful, and dangerous. So basically, my family heavily believes that when someone passes away, they come back as something else. On my grandpa's last day, he said he would come back as a white butterfly. He knew exactly when he was going to die. He may have been somewhat psychic. A few days before, his doctor told him he would pass away in 2 to 3 days. But he corrected him, saying he would die in 5 days, exact. And he did just that. The following is what my grandma told me. I was about 5 or 6 around this time, and the rest of my family and I were quite devastated when he died. But as we were leaving the hospital, the most interesting thing happened in front of my grandma's eyes. Apparently, little 5 to 6-year-old me was surrounded by white butterflies, and being the giggly child I was laughing at all the butterflies around me, just as my grandpa said before dying. He'd come back as a white butterfly, so this was comforting our belief that people come back as something else after death. My grandma said that the butterflies just disappeared into thin air before her and my aunt's eyes. Yes, my aunt saw it all too. They both recently talked about it. I'm almost 17 now, and so many things are increasing my beliefs in the supernatural. The rest of my family too also believes in it. I'm Native American, enrolled in the Crow tribe. So the supernatural stuff isn't really creepy to us because we know there are spirits upon this earth with us. As a kid, I heard many stories of this type of stuff, so I never fear anything unnatural, but instead respect them and know they are true. Anyway, when I was a kid, my uncles, brothers, and I all went fishing one time at Fort Smith Mountain. It's a beautiful place to fish and stuff, and a well-known fishing spot. We spent the whole day fishing there, from about noon till it was time to leave. The sun was setting and the skies started turning their gray color. Just as this was happening, my uncle said, "Do you hear that?" And I stopped what I was doing and started listening for something. In the distance, I could hear a drum beating in a double beat, the type of sound you'll hear at a powwow, but instead with no song. We sat there for just a minute or two, listening as it flowed with the river. The drum got louder and sounded closer. My uncle said it was time to go. So we got all of our food that we brought with us and threw it all in the river as a gift to them for letting us fish. I asked them who or what they were, and they told me it was the water people. Usually this type of stuff is creepy and scares one, but it fascinates me. And I love to know these spirits and unnatural things are real and alive. When I lived in Italy, I was helping a Nigerian man who lived there with a few things. His son had been a troublemaker, and part of my job at the time was to help put together a plan on how to make things better for him at home. Whenever I come over, it seems like a perfect home life, but the son, 17 years old, hated being there and never said why. As I come over more often, it starts to seem a little surreal. Then the dad, who'd been incredibly friendly, said something about my sister at home when I realized I never told him about my sister. The second I realized that, despite saying nothing, everything felt off and weird, and the dad was very hostile. Once I got home, I thought about it a lot and felt very unsettled. I called the next week to cancel our appointment because it felt wrong, and the dad was outright hostile and aggressive toward me. The following week, I had a quick appointment with another Nigerian man who I had been friends with for over a year. He told me, as I was about to leave, to be careful because there was darkness around me. I hadn't said anything, but I was going to see the father and his son. I was sweating and anxious as I knocked on the door, and the dad opened up with an angry look on his face. Without saying a word, he showed me hard enough to knock me down. He started walking toward me, and behind him, I could see into the apartment, which looked nothing like I remembered. Paint was peeling from the walls, and the place looked disgusting, smelled foul, even from 6+ feet away. I stood up and shoved him back and called for his son, immediately worried about him. The son came into view as the father got up and looked like he was going to leap for me. The son yelled, "Go," and I ran. I felt dirty after and called the cops, but they found nothing at the apartment. My Nigerian friend told me that the man was definitely a witch doctor or something, and it was hard to believe at first, but now I can't help but wonder. A few years ago, I was camping out in the woods of Wisconsin, and I decided to sleep in a hammock overnight. At some point, I woke up because I thought I heard something moving, but I dismissed it as some animal. I'm in the middle of the woods, so it made sense. I started to go back to sleep, but I started to hear something else that really freaked me out. It was the distinct sound of someone breathing right next to me. I was really scared, but I couldn't see who it was because I slept with part of the sleeping bag over my head. I just tried to stay quiet and hope it wouldn't stop. But after a long time, I still heard it. I like to face my fears, so I tried to slowly get out of the hammock and see what was there. Unfortunately, the hammock was pretty small, and instead of slowly getting out, I just fell straight to the ground. I was terrified that I would look up and see someone, but there was nobody there. It was actually pitch black around me, so I didn't bother to go search. Instead, I just got back in the hammock and tried to fall asleep. I was awake for most of the night after that, but I never heard the breathing again. Still kind of freaks me out today. When I was still dating my ex, we traveled to a fairly well-known spot in Brazil where folks say there are UFOs, magical quartz caves, good spirits, and the like. This spot is also famous for its natural beauty, waterfalls, hiking spots, mountains, and for being pretty much a popular stoner's destination. I was there for the natural beauty and because I had never traveled without my family. She was there for the natural beauty and the weird spiritual vibe that came from smoking marijuana atop a pyramid watching the sunset. We made reservations for 5 days at a local hostel, and it was pretty much fantastic. We visited waterfalls, watched the sunset more than once, had fun at the local bars, enjoyed the local cuisine. The region is also famous for its traditional cooking, and even made fast friends with a couple that was there also on vacation. We hitched some rides and walked pretty much everywhere. Everything felt safe. Everything felt nice. And I, being the stupid guy I am, suggested we should wake up early in the morning of the 4th day to watch the sunrise. She agreed. There was a mountain top 20 minutes away that would be perfect. It sounded safe. And if the sunset was amazing, just imagine what the sunrise is like. We went to bed, had some fun, and we both fell asleep. And then I wake up at 3 in the morning. I wake up, sit, and the only thing in my head is an alarm going, Griffo, Caulo, there is something outside of the hostel wanting blood, and if you step outside now, you're going to die. I try to rationalize. I try to calm down. My body is tense. I feel as if my skin is hardening, and all my hair is standing. I think about reaching for the light switch, but the alarm in my head is still on. Griffin Callow, you do not want to move. It will follow. You're only safe if you stay right where you are. My blood is curling. I am too cold to the touch. There is just this dread I can't source. My eyes are squinting. I'm almost crying. I look to the window, which is closed. I know something is waiting outside. A few years earlier, I saw my mother almost dead, passed out. I saw my brother with his forehead and chin pumping blood. I got knocked out while underwater in a pool. I had a guy hold me at knife point. Nothing ever felt as real and as terrorizing as that morning, sitting in my bed, knowing deep inside that if I stepped out of that room, I'd die. My then girlfriend woke up, noticed I was tense, and asked what was up. I said we should not get out of the room till the surprise. That I knew something bad would happen. She agreed and went back to sleep. We never touched again on the subject. We enjoyed the remainder of the 4th and 5th days, and the dread was gone. We went back to our regular lives. We broke up somewhere in May of 2015. I had told friends of the travel. I never spoke about the dread. I felt that morning. Then a friend of mine decided to go. Enjoyed the hell out of it. He went with a girl he was seeing at the time. He was as happy as a pig in shit when he got back. After a few months, and some beers after that, he just said, "You know, Griffo Cowlo, it was amazing, but there was something that got me worried. I'd almost forgotten the story by then, but the way he said it just made me remember everything. When I was near the wind portal, late into the night, I heard something talking." Our hostel room, when we visited, was near the wind portal. We did arrange to see the sunrise there. I felt the same sensations I had a year prior. I asked if he dreaded it. He just swallowed another beer can and replied dead serious, "I'm pretty sure it was some kind of devil trying to lure us, but I'm also pretty sure that it must have been something else. It was talking to something or someone, and I did not want to hear it. I just got out of there as fast as I could." I then proceeded to blurt out my story. Silence came afterwards. We went for a few more beers and went to both of our homes afterwards, and we agreed that there was something wrong here, that this idyllic little town encrusted in the mountainside of Minas Gerais had something very good, but also held something very bad there, something heinous and hungry. If you guys ever want to travel there, it is called São Tomé das Letras. It is not difficult to get there, but it takes quite a lot of time. It is a little, sympathetic town with stone streets, 2 churches, maybe 2 or 3 bars, about a dozen waterfalls, and some nice views. It also hosts a modern rustic pyramid built atop one of the mountains and many, many little stones that tourists stack to say that they were there and did leave no trash behind. Ours must still be there, I think. But stay away from the wind portal at the dead of night. Something evil lurks there. I used to be an atheist, a full skeptic, not believing in any remote chance of the supernatural. But that single experience made me worry that maybe there are some things we do not know, and among these, some that we are not meant to. Early 2000s, 13 years old, house phone with no caller ID. I was home alone and had locked myself in my parents' bedroom to feel safe when I received several phone calls from a stranger with a gruff voice. The stranger repeatedly asked me what I was doing. I was watching The Simpsons. So I told it I was watching The Simpsons. Then the stranger says, "No, what are you doing locked in your parents' bedroom like a little bitch?" I freaked out and phoned my family for help. Brother? Stationed states away. Parents? 3 hours away. Sister? 2 hours away. Which cousin lived with us? At work for another hour. Whatever is calling and knows my specific location and that the door is locked is calling in my perfect isolation. As an idiot 13-year-old, I don't think to call the police. My family says it's fine. No one's after me. Probably just a prank call. The stranger calls a final time and says, "Why don't you open the door for me?" Right as my parents' locked bedroom door is bombarded with heavy, banging knocks. The phone is dead. I'm crying, praying, and cursing. Eventually, the knocks subside. Eventually, I step outside. No one's there. I grab a knife and clear every bedroom. No one's there. Every window and door is locked. To this day, I've no clue who called and knocked. I just hope it never happens again. When I lived in Houston, my roommate's 5-year-old daughter got terribly sick, and despite taking her to the Jefferson Davis Hospital, doctors couldn't figure it out. In the meantime, this little girl got sicker and sicker till she could hardly lift her head. Then a neighbor across the street brought a witch over and said they knew what to do. This old woman who spoke no English looked the little girl over and then had my roommate bring her a plain juice glass and an egg. The woman prayed over the 2 items, then broke the egg over the glass and set the egg and glass in the bedroom window. We were told under no circumstances to touch the glass. We all went to bed, and the next morning I awoke to my roommate screaming from her daughter's room. And I thought the little girl had died, but to my astonishment, the little girl was sitting up in bed, all bright-eyed, telling her mom she was hungry. When we looked in the glass, the egg had turned this really revolting shade of red and black and smelled worse than something dead in the heat. The little girl continued to improve and amaze the doctors. The old witch told a friend across the street that someone put the evil eye on the little girl. It made a believer out of me. So this is the first time I've commented something on here, but I think this occurrence is something worth mentioning, and maybe some of you can give me some input on what you think might have happened. I'm not great at telling stories, so please bear with me. One night, my friend and I decided to go on a night hike. It's a well-known trail with a great overlook in the city. It's about a 45-minute hike to the overlook. This trail is in the Santa Barbara Mountains of California, so it's pretty green and foresty for as much as Santa Barbara can get. Well, once on top, we decided to drink some beers. We were both probably one beer in when this giant bright red light overtook us from behind. I, of course, thought it was just me, but as I looked at him, I realized he saw it also. This light was so bright and intense that we assumed probably a meteorite burned up in the atmosphere behind us or something. But then we realized that the light only encompassed us and not the entire area. That did scare us, but we tried to play it off again as maybe our minds getting the best of us or nearby military base doing something. Not soon after, we started to hear movement in the bushes to the right of us, and then to the left. We started to shout, asking if anyone was there. Maybe there were other people on the trail we didn't see, and maybe they'd come up after us and take a picture of us from behind, but no answer. But the real dread didn't start to kick in until I realized that we hadn't heard a single animal or insect since the flash. I know that something was off, and almost instantly after realizing this, I was almost certain that I was going to die. I was certain that we weren't the only two beings on that mountain that night. I can't explain what I felt, but I've never felt a sensation like that before. My body felt like it wanted to shut down, and my mind was paralyzed in fear. Finally, we came to the conclusion that we had to leave that instant, or else we wouldn't be making it out alive. With the empty bottles in our hands, we decided to make our way back to the beginning of the trail to descend the mountain. No matter what I did or where I turned, I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched as I walked. Thankfully, as we got to the entrance of the trail, I saw a tarantula carelessly walking in front of me, and with the uneasiness, it evaporated. I'm pretty sure I used that little gal as a sign that if there was something menacing a couple of feet from us, she wouldn't have been walking about. So to this day, I have no idea what caused that light, nor if something else was really out there. But what I do know is that tarantulas don't give no fucks. My brother and I were exploring an old abandoned paper mill one night. I had been there dozens of times, and my brother had probably been 2 or 3 times. All those times had been during the day, as the place could be really dangerous. If you didn't know the layout, you could literally fall 3 stories onto rubble and steel, or get lost in the many ever-dark subterranean corridors. Anyway, this particular night, we had all the appropriate gear with us to just hang out, smoke a few bowls, and have a few drinks while listening to home music. We were in a huge open room that had several dead-end rooms off of it at the back and corridors that led out in the other 3 directions. We had everything set up in the back room, as it was cold in there, and the acoustics were best with our tiny speakers. There was a designated pee spot just out of the corridor as it led outside, which is where I went to relieve myself, leaving my brother alone in the big room dancing to the music. I was maybe a minute and a half tops. But on the walk back I noticed the music had stopped, which was weird, as the speaker and my phone both had full charge. Now keep in mind it's pitch black outside. The flashlight beam, except for a few glow sticks placed around the back wall. As I walk into the huge room, I see my brother 20 feet off to my right, facing the wall, and slowly kicking some loose rubble or debris at it. He's got a weird hunch to him, as if he's sifting through the debris, looking for something. Probably his lighter. I'm thinking that he's dropped. I turn my light off as I take my next few steps to get a fresh beer. I'm about 10 to 12 feet behind him now. I can clearly hear the sound of him shuffling through what sounded like shale. I asked him something like, "Did you lose your lighter or a bud or something?" No response. My words echoed. Just more foot shuffling with his back to me. At this point, I thought he was just looking around, trying to give me a scare. Anyway, I laughed and told him it was a good try, and my next words were frozen in my throat. I hear a booming, "What?" from over my left shoulder. It was my fucking brother. I instantly went white, felt my heart drop, and broke into a crazy sweat all in half a second. I whipped around to see him coming through the other corridor, glow stick around his neck, and beer in hand. I was shaking and thought I was going to throw up for about 5 minutes after that. It turns out he had to pee as well, and just went down the other way. I have no idea how to explain what I saw or heard that night, but I know for sure I did experience it. To this day, I'll hear that certain tone of the rocks kicked across the ground in an almost echo chamber, and it gives me chills. My brother was so freaked out that I was so freaked out that we packed up and left immediately. He thought I was trying to freak him out. It was another 10-minute walk to get off the property, and we were talking about what had just happened. He hadn't seen or heard anything unusual, except for me talking to myself. I asked him why he shut the music off, if he was only going for a pee, which he thought I did while he was gone. This was when Bluetooth was still pretty expensive to have a decent speaker, so it was a weird unit. Neither of us touched the phone, and everything was working properly and charged up. We listened to music all the way home. This was just over 10 years ago, and I still get freaked out when I think about it. It's got a whole Blair Witch vibe to it, just a guy in the corner shuffling. Well, if you didn't see Blair Witch, a little spoiler there. Yeah, pretty creepy. These stories were good today. Again, the supernatural stuff for me, it's, doesn't always hit with me because I haven't really experienced it, but I know you guys love it. And there's a lot of good camping stuff today too. So anyway, have a great day. Hope you're all doing well. I'm visiting family in St. Catharines, Ontario, Canada, and it's at my uncle's house. The setup is interesting, so bear with me. My uncle is about to remarry, and it's the day before the wedding at his house. His previous wife had passed away in their house a few years beforehand. She had died in the main floor bedroom across from the dining room. I'm downstairs and I'm playing Nintendo, and I decide that I'm hungry. I get up and start walking up the stairs, and I get this feeling that I am not alone. Like how you feel another presence in the room. I stop and turn around halfway up the stairs and look down at something so strange. I see this black mist pooling in the middle of the floor, and it starts rapidly forming into a human shape, and I recognize it as my uncle's dead wife, but all dressed in black, and her features are obscured. I run up the stairs and into the living room with my family. The living room is filled with my cousins and my grandmother. I hide beside the couch. I hear something coming from the dining room. My aunt used to wear these heavy nursing type shoes, a very distinctive sound on hardwood floors to say the least. So all of us hear the sound of someone walking in the dining room. My grandmother and all of us peek into the dining room and see the solid black form walk across the dining room. We all briefly exchanged looks, as if to say, "Are we seeing this?" The form walks across the dining room and down the hallway toward the bedroom where she died. My grandmother speaks up before any of us can say anything, and she whispers out, "Mary." The form doesn't stop, doesn't look back, but just goes down the hallway and into the bedroom door and disappears. All of us finally exhale and resume our routines, but we don't speak about it for years later. I later find out that my uncle's wife tried to have the house blessed, but I don't know if it ever worked. I stayed there once in college, and I stayed in the basement again, and I wouldn't sleep with the lights out. I just knew, deep down in my heart, that if I slept in the dark, I would wake up to something very unpleasant. I was 8 years old. I had 3 older sisters, and the oldest had the single bedroom that was upstairs. It was an old house, and there were probably 12 wooden steps to get to the landing of the upstairs. At the top, there was a storage area very dimly lit by the single hanging light bulb, and there was a wall in the back with a door in the middle, and behind that door was her bedroom. My oldest sister was 14 then. On a few occasions, she would come down and stay in the other sister's room because of noises she heard. The noises became soft voices, and once that started, she never slept alone upstairs. There was always an uneasy feeling when we went up there. It always felt strange. The bedroom was soon abandoned. My stepfather decided to remodel and tear her bedroom out, and eventually add a bathroom and another bedroom. Eventually, there were 2x4s up indicating the rooms, but with no drywall. Just boards that allowed you to see the entire layout. In what was to be a new bedroom, we had a mattress on the floor, and a small table next to it, on which stood a lamp. One weekend, my stepsister stayed the night. She, my middle sister Pam, and I went up to play 45s on the record player and hang out and sleep. I was 8 and she was 12 then. We were winding down to sleep and lying on the mattress. I was on the far left and they were to my left. For once, I wasn't afraid to be upstairs. We were talking and laughing, and actually there were no uneasy feelings at all. It was nice. We kept the lamp on, which was on the other side of the mattress. The 2 girls were talking about normal stuff. I was lying there listening and looking over to where my older sister's room was. There were boards on the floor and boxes cluttering the area. The lamp wasn't a bright one, and as you looked over into the back of the old bedroom, it was more shadowy, but you could still see well. For once, I wasn't afraid, and things felt normal. As they continued to chat, I gazed again at my sister's old room, and standing behind a box was a dark-haired woman in a white gown. I immediately froze and looked away. I remember my heart pounding as I turned away from what I was seeing. I lay there, panicked, and told myself, wait, maybe it was a shadow of something. I decided I had to look back and confirm it wasn't real. I turned my head back to the left, and she was still standing there. No expression, just silently looking at us. My sisters were lost in conversation, and I bolted up screaming and running downstairs to pound on my mom and stepdad's door, full of hysteria. The girls ran down after me, scared because of my actions. I didn't say anything, just screamed and ran. My stepfather went up to check it out, and of course he saw nothing. I'm not one to believe in ghosts. I do believe in demons. That's far scarier. The woman was vivid and not a hallucination. I was wide awake, and I looked back to confirm. It never happened again, nor have I ever experienced anything like that since. People were always hearing noises upstairs, and there was always a feeling of foreboding. The rooms were never finished. After this episode, my mother started feeling her blankets being slowly pulled off of her as she slept, while my stepfather was working and us kids were off to school. We moved less than a year later. Nothing happened at our new house. I was a camp counselor at a very old girls' boarding school in the U.S. We had the obligatory doors slamming, random sounds, leaving something somewhere, and it showing up somewhere else, etc. But there was also some actual scary and creepy stuff that I will never be able to forget. I remember leaving the computer lab, which was ironically located in the oldest building on campus. When you walked out of that room, you turned left down a long, narrow hallway, and at the end, there was a flight of stairs going down to an open foyer with an exterior door. I turned down the hallway, and there was a girl walking about 10 feet in front of me. She had on a uniform, which was odd. It was summer, but it didn't really alarm me until I realized it looked nothing like the uniforms the regular students wore. But it did look a lot like the ones the girls in photos from the 1910s and 20s wore. She walked all the way to the top of the stairs and then stopped. Instead of going down the stairs, she looked back down the hallway straight through me and then dove over the railing down into the foyer. When I got to the top of the stairs, there was no one around and no indication that anyone had been there. There was also a dance studio above the auditorium that everyone insisted was haunted, and for good reason. A woman had been ardent murdered by a house parent in that room in the 1950s, and people, often jokingly, said they could sometimes see her. This happened before the hallway incident, and had never taken any of that seriously. I had a group of about 8-9-year-old campers with me, and we walked into what I can only describe as an absolute bloodbath. Streaks across the mirrors and windows, blood pooling on the floor, clumps of hair still stuck to the scalp all over the place, and the body of a teenage girl crumpled in the corner. I didn't scream, but I gasped out loud, and really quickly pushed all of my campers back into the hallway. The instructor was just walking up at that point, and she asked me what was wrong. I tried to articulate what I saw, but I was very confused by my campers' total lack of fear. Turns out, I was the only one who saw the mess. 2 minutes later, we all went back into the room, and all of it was gone. The school archives had newspaper clippings from that murder, and what I saw corresponded with the photos, minus the body in the corner. I still have nightmares about that sometimes. Those are probably the scariest experiences I had in my 3 summers working there. Not sure if this fits, as it's more something that I experienced. However, there was a real-life element to the experience. About 20 plus years ago, I'm 60 now, I was assistant manager for a newspaper group, and my boss was going through a tough time. His wife had left him, and he was struggling with it. He was drinking a lot and would go visit doctors asking for pethidine for what was saying were headaches. But he confided he just wanted to be numb. Yeah, I tried talking to him, but he said he was fine and things would get better over time. Anyway, one Saturday night, I had this bizarre dream or nightmare. In the dream, I'm in my house, and there's a loud knocking at the door. I hear my boss screaming at me, "Let me in, for God's sake. You must let me in." He was calling my name and asking over and over for me to open the front door and let him in. In the dream, I see my hand reaching for the door handle, but a voice inside me says with authority, but with a soft voice, "Do not do it. Do not open the door." This stops me. The voice is it's like someone with knowledge warning me that this will be a bad thing to do. I have no idea who or what this is, but again, my boss is now begging, and my hand again reaches forward. But again, the voice warns me. I pull back my hand, and the dream ends. I wake up, and it's so real. I'm sitting in bed, and I remember the details vividly. Next to me, my wife is sleeping, and I look at the clock on my bedside table. It's around 3 a.m. Eventually, I go back off to sleep. In the morning, we take a long drive to the coast. and it's a good day. My health had been struggling a bit with stress, etc., but this day was good. I felt fine and enjoyed the time with the family. We arrived home around 4 p.m. in the afternoon, and there was a voice message on my answering machine. Remember, this was over 20 years ago. The message is from one of our office girls, the one who was the PA to my boss. The message is, "Jack, not my real name. I've got bad news. Philip, not my boss's real name, died last night around 3 a.m. in the hospital." I just found it really strange. I had such an intense and realistic dream about him, and the content of the dream has stayed with me to this day. It almost felt like someone in my dream was holding me back from making a very bad mistake. This happened a couple of years back. I was backpacking in Northern California, Shasta Trinity Wilderness area, and had already set up camp for the night. I'm a pretty experienced hiker and have seen or heard some shit in my time out there, bears and the like. I saw what I assumed to be a cult compound once, so I'm not fazed super easily. Back to the story. Though, I was camped up by this lake drinking some cocoa and putting my fire out before crashing for the night when I heard this blood-curdling scream from across the lake. It was like nothing I'd ever heard before or since, so I was obviously a little on edge. I decided it would be wiser not to fall into horror movie tropes and investigate it, so I very quickly put out my fire and got into my sleeping bag, no tent, we go ultralight or we don't go at all, and tried to ignore the noise and put it out of my mind. Sometime later, maybe 3 a.m., I really couldn't tell at the time, I heard some rustling in the branches nearby, and then another scream from across the water. At this point, I was sufficiently freaked out, so I stuffed my stuff into my backpack and skedaddled to find a place where I could crash just off the trail nearby. It was the Pacific Coast Trail, so there are loads of little bivouac spots dotted all around it. I spent the rest of the night there, and in the morning I went back to check. Sure enough, the spot where I was at looked like a windstorm had passed through. Branches were scattered everywhere, and it was just hella unsettling. I don't really know what it was, but I just know that it wasn't another person or an animal for certain. Nothing could have made a sound like that. I was at a friend's house out in the middle of nowhere, an old big farm and a huge house. We had a really nice evening there, but every time I walked up the stairs to the second floor where we were going to sleep that night, I felt a weird and creepy feeling. I dismissed it until we decided to go to sleep in her bedroom. My 2 friends fell asleep in 2 seconds. I didn't sleep a wink that night because for some reason it felt like someone was watching me. It kept feeling like someone was standing at the edge of the stairs just staring at me, basically, and I didn't dare to either open my eyes or move the whole bloody night. The next morning, as we walked down to breakfast, I casually asked my friend if someone has ever died or anything in the house. She thought about it for a while, and then said that, well, the only one she knows about is the previous owner, who fell down the stairs and died. It creeped me out, the whole core. The second thing that happened to me was when I was still living at home as a kid. My mom worked nights, my brother was away, and my dad slept on the other side of the house, far away from my bedroom. Outside of my room, there's a hall, which no one goes into unless they need to go into either mine or my brother's room. Now, as I think most people can do, I can hear whose family member's footsteps it is walking outside of my door just by listening. Now, one night, when I was a teenager, as I said, it was only me and my dad in the house, on 2 opposite ends of the house that night. Anyway, I'm lying in bed, closing my eyes, and getting ready to fall asleep, when I all of a sudden hear these loud footsteps going from the other end of the hall to standing just outside my room. My door is closed, and I just have a feeling that was the only thing making whatever it was not able to get in. I sit up in bed, scared absolutely shitless, because I know for a fact that it's not my father by the sound of the footsteps, but also because it sounds like a person is wearing huge boots or something. The steps keep repeating for a couple of minutes, back and forth, until it just suddenly disappears. And after that, I've never ever heard it again. I've asked my father if he was, for some reason, running around the house in the morning after, and he just looked at me with a confused face and said, "No, of course not." So yeah, who knows? I live in a house built in the 70s. There's a story about the first people who lived there. The husband had killed his wife in the living room, nailing her to the back of the living room wall specifically. That just starts all the shit. 4, maybe 5 years ago, my brother, who lived in the loft above the garage, which wasn't connected to the house, had brought home a girl. And every day, when he came home from work, she would be sitting on the floor with candles and a box. When they had broken up, my brother noticed a lot of weird shit, like seeing a shadow in the corner of his room or waking up to it in his face. He would hear late at night someone running full speed up and down the steps. He would wake up with his bruises on his arms and legs. We figured that it was a demon, and my family, being Catholic, had given him blessed rosaries to hang on the ceiling. They would swing rapidly and randomly. It got so bad and attached itself to my brother that it would follow him wherever he went. He would even sleep down in the living room some nights because he was so afraid. He finally moved out, and it hasn't happened to him because it says it's in the loft. To add, this year my stepsister moved into the loft, and she would experience the exact same thing my brother did. She would come down every morning telling me how she slept with scissors to protect her. Another story. My daughter, who is 3 now, would see a man in the house. When I was a waitress, I would come home late, and some nights she would wait up for me. One night I was sitting up at the table, counting my tips, while she was playing in the living room. Next thing I know, she runs into the kitchen, grabbing me, hiding and saying, "Mommy, there's a man in there." So I got up, walked to the entrance of the living room, and she, behind my leg, pointed to the corner and said, "There he is." But no one was there. I instantly picked her up and ran into the room and locked the door. I stayed up all night that night. Some nights, I would wake up to my baby crying hysterically, pointing to the corner of the room, saying that the man is in our room. She would see him outside in our backyard too. She and I were walking around the backyard with her baby and a stroller. She stops dead in her tracks and does this little finger motion to the shed. And I said, "What, baby? Have you seen something? You sensed something?" And she replies to me, "No, Mommy, the man lives in there. He doesn't like the house, so he lives in the shed." I picked her up so fast and went into the house. That was the last time I ever heard of the man. So, I live in a little old town in Denmark called Roslev. It's a small city with around 1,500 people populated in the area. We live in a house that was built in 1879. I was about 7 to 8 years old, and my mom tucked me into bed with the door open behind her, and while she had her back to the door, I saw a shadow with a face and dark eyes looking straight ahead at me and waving. When I saw it, I just froze and couldn't move or say anything. My mom thought I had a seizure and was really worried. 11 years later, I still haven't told her about that episode, because at first I thought I just saw something random, maybe a guy. just standing and watching. But the more time passed, the more details have been applied somehow, probably because I'm thinking in a different way than what I used to do in my younger age. However, now am 100% certain that whatever it was definitely not human. It was dark outside, and the whole thing from the chest and up was pitch black. But you could notice the black eyes and the wavy face it had. It's so different and hard to explain, but you could definitely see the difference between a regular guy at night and then this thing. From that point in my life, I've always locked my doors whenever I go to sleep. And I just past few years, and my parents have set the house on an alarm, and I just can't wait to move on from here. Not me, but my brothers told me to the other day. Apparently he was planning on getting an upside down cross tattooed on him. Done my deal already. And to make sure he liked it, he drew a mock-up version in Sharpie where he wanted it. On his side. Right underneath his armpit. Well, after about a week of having it on, he wakes up at 3 in the morning, very suddenly, and shoots up in his bed not feeling groggy or tired in the slightest. He sits there for half a second before running out of his room into the bathroom to wash off the tattoo because he said it just felt like it was on fire and not his whole body, just the tattoo. He said he could clearly feel the outline of the cross burning into his skin and the pain it was causing him made him start to cry. He said it was like nothing he's ever felt before, and he described it as true fear and agony. Eventually, he grabbed some rubbing alcohol and a cloth and got it off. But after that, he said he didn't sleep for the rest of the night and had the lights on the whole time until he had to get to school. He hasn't told this to anyone else. He's crazy, but the whole time he was telling me he had goosebumps, and we both felt as if there was something else in the room with us.